Good day everyone, the Anime Dao here with another video. Today we will be talking about a special series called By the Grace of Gods. Why is it special, you might ask? Well, that is what I will tell you, so stick around to hear it. But first, don't forget to subscribe, it helps the channel out. By the Grace of Gods started off like many Isekai, as a web novel in Shosetsuka ni Naro, a website I talked about in my very first video in the channel. So if you want to know more about it, just check that video out. It was caught in the rush of publishers picking up popular web novels titles to publish as light novels. But what's so good about this novel? Well, the wonder of this novel is the complete lack of plot that it manages to pull off reasonably well without becoming tedious, because it manages to blend elements of healing and yin with the mostly slice of life storytelling. Don't worry, I will explain what I mean by yin again. By the Grace of Gods was actually rewritten. Roy, the author, initially wrote another version of the series, but he decided later to rewrite as he was dissatisfied with it. So he created a new version, and this version is the one that became the light novel and eventually the anime. The anime adaptation aired in 2020, but it did eventually get a second season, to my surprise, in 2022, to my delight. This is actually one of the few Isekai light novels that I have kept up with for the past few years. I'm currently caught up on the light novel releases. You could say I am invested in the story, but well, like I said, there is no story. So is it the characters then? Not really. By the end of the video, hopefully you might understand why I like this series, but let me just describe what it is about first. The story of the series follows Ryoma Takebayashi, an overworked salaryman that dies and is suddenly faced by three gods. These three gods give him the chance to be reincarnated into their world, into the body of an 8-year-old boy. Naturally, Ryoma takes up the offer. After being reincarnated, he lives in the forest in solitude and experiments with the slimes he tames. Slimes are a big thing in this series. The main character has an obsession with them, and I can't blame him for it. Because aren't they the cutest? Actually, there's another Isekai with cuter slimes. You might be able to guess which Isekai I'm talking about. Maybe not. A few years skip by and Ryoma encounters a group of warriors and notices one is quite injured. So he offers to help, being the kind person he is. The group accepts his help despite their initial suspicions of him. After following him home though, they're puzzled that he lives on his own and the unique races of slime he has. For instance, he has slimes that can clean any dirt, and also slimes that consume waste matter, and many others. I always found this a bit of a stretch. Their world might be less developed, but I can't help but think someone else would have discovered the potential of slimes to transform into the most convenient things ever. They can evolve to do anything imaginable. This group of warriors are thankful for him, and one of them turns out to be a duke. After their companion recuperates, they decide to leave. However, they pity the main character, who is only 12 but lives in complete solitude. So they come back a few months later and offer him the chance to go back to the town with them. Ryoma decides to take up on the offer, and that sets off the story. Well, story in quotation marks. Like many other Isekai, Ryoma is kind of a cheat character. Not only are the slimes incredibly useful, but he can use all types of magic with relative ease. This makes the story have a sense of ease, because it does not seem like the odds are stacked against the main character. Instead, it's actually the opposite. The odds are all favoring the main character, so you wouldn't want to bet against the main character. However, this is not a bad thing when it comes to Isekai, because it is actually one of the main appeals of them. The Isekai trend that started off as web novels emerged firstly through people sharing stories in the website Naro, many of which drew heavily from Dragon Quest. So they have an element of fan fiction, and many of these stories were about the author's own inner fantasies. It turns out that many people on the internet were looking for those sort of stories that are basically about people living their fantasies and fulfilling their desires. This is where the word in comes from. It translates into the desire of the mind. So it's basically people wanted novels that could help fulfill their unfulfilled desires. All novels or any other piece of entertainment appeal to people on a personal level, either because the story is interesting or you are attached to the characters. But Isekai appeal on a more basic level, since it is all about the desires of people. This is why these novels can also be called wish fulfillment. There is an element of it just tempting to a base emotional desire. This is why Isekai can often be heavy on overpowered main characters that have the capacity and will to do anything they want. It's about living that fantasy that is impossible in our own world. It's a form of escapism. Isekai can be stories of comeuppance, where the main character is humiliated but comes back overpowered, or where they are overpowered from the get-go and beat down any enemy in his path. The way the story plays out is set from the beginning, and there is a level of certainty that the main character will win. And that's the point, because it's not about the story, but how the main character can fulfill his desires and wishes and do anything he really wants. Adding to this is the fact that main characters in Isekai are usually neets, bullied people, or simply people that felt unfulfilled in life. However, in this other world, they are given the chance to live a life that they can feel content with. In By the Grace of Gods, the same element is highlighted through the main character who is harassed in his workplace and has nothing to look forward to in life. Not only that, the oppression by his workers and in his childhood by his father made him unwilling to form real bonds with people despite his kindness. So Ryoma has a natural tendency to avoid any relationships with people. In a sense, he lives within his own shell. In the other world though, he has a natural advantage of his peers, and the people he meets are nicer. They are not beating him up or making him do overtime. So his experience of living in another world and the skills given to him by the gods makes his life so much easier in this other world. However, there's still the unwillingness to become too close to the family of the Duke, which means he quickly seeks out a way to become independent. So to become independent, what does he do? Well, what he does not do is strive to go on adventures or become some sort of hero, even though he has the power to do that. So instead, what does he do with his knowledge and powers? Is open a business to make money, to be able to support himself. Alongside this is his natural interest in experimenting with slimes. Naturally, because of the power and skills he has, everything he does kind of succeeds. So Ryoma can do what he wants in this life. And the story of the series is precisely about that. This is where Iyashi meets In-yi. The In-yi element comes from the fact he's able to do as he wishes, unhinged by the world due to the powers and abilities he has. The Ashi element comes from the fact the series has no real plot and is geared not towards conflict, but peace. By the Grace of Gods managed to blend these elements so well, which is the main reason it's such an enjoyable title for me. The series has no real major conflict or any overarching plot to speak of. The story is all about Ryoma healing himself from the terrible things that happened to him in his previous life. The first season itself covered very little of the novel so far, and hopefully the second season covers a bit more, not that it changes too much. So the series is keenly focused on the positive experiences he encounters and how he spreads it to others in the world. Whilst there is some conflict and problems crop up every once in a while, they are swiftly resolved. It is through this story centered around Ryoma opening up his jaded heart that By the Grace of God manages to be as good as Inuyasha, but at the same time tap into the wish fulfillment In-yi theme. It has no real plot, but it manages to fuel my desires and heal me. So it's one of those increasing number of isekais where nothing really happens, but that is what is good about it. I like it just fine when everything's peaceful. So what do you guys think about this series, or others like it? Leave your thoughts on the comments section down below. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on your way out. Catch you guys later!